New Orleans is often called the most haunted city in the United States. This is not just because of a few scary stories told around a campfire. Instead, the haunting of New Orleans is built into the very ground, the old buildings, and the stories passed down for hundreds of years. To understand why this city has so many ghost sightings, one must look at how its history and its physical location work together. The city was founded in 1718 on a piece of land that is very low and surrounded by water. This creates a place where the air is often thick with fog and the ground is always wet. For many people who live there, it feels like the wall between the living and the dead is very thin. The stories of New Orleans are a mix of many different cultures. People from France, Spain, and Africa all brought their own beliefs about spirits and the afterlife. When these beliefs mixed together in the swampy heat of Louisiana, they created a unique kind of folklore. Our research for this video will tell the stories of the most famous ghost sightings, the legends of vampires and swamp monsters, and the historical events that left the city feeling haunted. These cemeteries are often called cities of the dead because the tombs look like tiny houses. They are arranged in rows like streets. Because the dead are buried above the ground where people can see their monuments, it makes it feel like the spirits are still part of the neighborhood. This creates an environment where people are more likely to think about ghosts and tell stories about them. One of the most important figures in New Orleans history and folklore is Marie Laveau. She lived in the 1800s and was known as the Voodoo Queen of New Orleans. Marie was a free woman of color who was a hairdresser, a healer, and a powerful leader in the Voodoo religion. She was famous for helping people from all walks of life. She would visit prisoners, nurse people during yellow fever outbreaks, and give advice to wealthy women. Marie Laveau's ghost is said to be seen in many places. The most common sighting is near her house on St. Anne Street. People say they see a woman wearing a long white dress and a turban with 7 points. Did you know that the points on her turban represent her status as a queen? Marie Laveau is buried in St. Louis Cemetery No. 1, which is the oldest cemetery in the city. Her tomb is the most visited grave in the United States. Would you believe even more than the grave of Elvis Presley? For many years, a legend said that if you wanted Marie Laveau to grant you a wish, you had to perform a special ritual at her tomb. This involved marking 3 X signs on the stone, turning around 3 times, knocking on the tomb, and leaving a gift like coins or flowers. While people still visit her tomb today, the city has made it illegal to mark the stone because it was causing too much damage to the old brick and plaster. Even so, people still leave small gifts at the base of the tomb. Many visitors report feeling a strange energy when they stand near her resting place. Some say they hear a woman's voice whispering, or they see a large black snake, which was said to be her pet. The house where Marie Laveau lived is now a private apartment building located at St. Anne Street. While some stories mention people staying there for short vacations in the past, the building is now used for people who live there for a long time, often requiring a stay of at least 30 days. There is also a place with a very similar name called the St. Anne Cottage at the Bourbon Orleans Hotel nearby, but that is a special space used for private parties and weddings, not a room for overnight guests. Even though tourists can no longer stay at the original site for a single night, people who have lived in or visited the building have reported very spooky experiences. One story tells of a couple who heard the loud sounds of drums and chanting coming from the living room in the middle of the night. When they checked, the house was empty and all the windows were locked. Other reports mention seeing a shadowy figure standing in the corner of a room or feeling a strange force holding people down in bed. Finding a single perfect feather on the floor is often considered a sign that Marie Laveau's spirit is nearby. In her religion, a feather can be a sign of good luck, but if it is found on a pillow, it might be a warning of a curse. The most infamous haunted house in New Orleans is the LaLaurie Mansion. It is located at 1138 Royal Street. In the early 1830s, a wealthy woman named Madame Delphine LaLaurie lived there. She was a famous socialite who held many parties for the rich people of the city. However, she had a terrible secret. She was very cruel to the people she enslaved. The secret was discovered in 1834 when a fire broke out in the kitchen. When people rushed into the house to put out the fire, they found a room at the top of the house where people were being treated very badly. When the people of New Orleans heard about this, they were so angry that a mob formed. Madame LaLaurie escaped the city and never returned, but the ghosts of her victims are said to remain in the house. People who walk by the mansion at night often report hearing screams or crying coming from the upper windows. Some have seen the ghost of a young girl who is said to have fallen from the balcony while trying to escape Madame LaLaurie. Those who have tried to live in the house in the years since then have reported being pushed by invisible hands or hearing the sound of chains dragging across the floor. The house is considered so haunted that many people will not even walk on the same side of the street as the mansion. Another grand house with a scary story is the Gardette Le Pretre house, which people call the Sultan's Palace. The story says that a mysterious man from the Ottoman Empire moved into the house in the 1800s. He brought a large group of followers and many beautiful women with him. They lived a life of luxury and had many parties that lasted all night. Neighbors could smell the scent of expensive incense and hear exotic music coming from the windows. One morning, the house was very quiet. A neighbor saw blood coming out from under the front door. When the police went inside, they found that everyone in the house had been killed. The man who claimed to be a sultan was found buried alive in the garden. No one ever found out who did it, although some people thought it was assassins sent by the man's brother. Today, the house is divided into apartments. People who live there say they hear the sounds of party music and people screaming. Some have seen the ghost of a man in a turban standing at the foot of their bed. Others say they smell the scent of spices and incense in the air, even when nobody is cooking. While historians say there is no record of this murder ever happening, the legend is so strong that it has become a permanent part of the city's ghost lore. New Orleans is famous for its stories about vampires. Some of these stories are from modern books, but the oldest legends go back to the very beginning of the city. These stories often focus on the Casket Girls and a man named Jacques Saint-Germain. In the 1720s, many young women were sent from France to New Orleans to marry the settlers. They were called Casket Girls because they brought their clothes and belongings in small trunks called cassettes. People began to think the word cassette meant a burial casket or coffin. Because the girls were very pale and thin after their long journey across the ocean, people started to whisper that they were not normal humans. The girls were taken to stay at the old Ursuline convent. The legend says that when the nuns opened the girls' trunks, they were empty. People believed the trunks had been used to smuggle vampires into the city. The nuns reportedly took the trunks to the attic and sealed the windows with nails that had been blessed by the Pope. If you walk past the convent today, you will see that the windows on the third floor are still closed tight with shutters. People believe that if those shutters were ever opened, the vampires would be released back into the city. In 1902, a man named Jacques Saint-Germain moved into a house on Royal Street. He was very wealthy and handsome. He threw many parties and served the best wine, but his guests noticed that he never ate any food. He would only sip a dark red liquid from a glass. He also told stories about being friends with famous people who had died hundreds of years ago, like he had actually been there to see them. One night, a woman was found on the street below his balcony. She was bleeding from her neck and claimed that Jacques had tried to bite her. When the police went to his house, he had disappeared. They found bottles in his kitchen that were filled with human blood mixed with wine. Many people believe that he was actually the Count of Saint-Germain, a famous man from history who was said to have discovered the secret of living forever. Many of the oldest hotels in the French Quarter are said to be haunted by the spirits of children. These stories are often sad, but they are a big part of why the hotels are so famous. The Hotel Monteleone is a very grand hotel that has been in the city for over 100 years. Its most famous ghost is a 4-year-old boy named Maurice Berger. Maurice was staying at the hotel with his family in the late 1800s when he got a high fever and died. His parents were so sad that they came back to the hotel every year, hoping to see his spirit. Today, many guests report seeing a little boy playing in the hallway on the 14th floor. He is said to run toward people as if he wants to play, but he disappears right before he gets to them. Guests also hear the sound of a child laughing when there are no children around. Besides Maurice, there is also a ghost named Mrs. Clean, who was a housekeeper at the hotel. People say she still keeps the hallways tidy even though she is no longer living. The Andrew Jackson Hotel was built on the site of an old school for boys. In 1794, a huge fire burned down most of the French Quarter, and the school was destroyed. The legend says that 5 young boys died in that fire. Guests at the hotel today often hear the sounds of children playing and giggling in their rooms. One specific ghost, named Armand, is known for being a prankster. He likes to pull the covers off of people while they are sleeping, or turn on the water in the bathroom. The Bourbon Orleans Hotel has a very long history. It was once a ballroom where famous parties were held, and later it was a convent and an orphanage. Because it was an orphanage, there are many stories about the ghosts of children who died there from yellow fever. Guests hear the sounds of children running and playing in the hallways at night. There is also a famous ghost of a nun, who is said to haunt room 644. People who stay in that room sometimes wake up to see a dark figure dressed as a nun praying by their bed. In the ballroom, people have seen the ghost of a woman dancing by herself under the big chandeliers. She is often seen near a spot on the floor that looks like a bloodstain, which reappears even if the staff tries to clean it. One of the scariest true stories in New Orleans history is the story of the Axeman. Between 1918 and 1919, a serial killer was breaking into houses and attacking people with axes. He mostly targeted families who owned small grocery stores. The killer was never caught, and his identity is still a mystery. In March 1919, a letter was sent to the local newspaper. The letter was signed, "The Axeman," and said that he was a demon from hell. He said that on a certain night, he would walk through the city and kill again. However, he made a deal with the people of New Orleans. He said he was very fond of jazz music and that he would not attack any house where a jazz band was playing. That night, the entire city was filled with the sound of jazz. People played records, professional bands played in clubs, and families played their own instruments at home. No one was killed that night. This story is a major part of New Orleans folklore because it connects the city's love for music with its dark and spooky history. Some people believe the Axeman was not a normal man, but a spirit or a demon who could become invisible. While many of the ghosts stay in the city, the wetlands and swamps outside of New Orleans are home to their own legendary monsters. These creatures are a major part of Cajun and Creole folklore. The rougarou is probably the most famous monster in Louisiana. It is described as a creature with the body of a human and the head of a wolf or a dog. The legend comes from old French stories about werewolves. In Louisiana, the story was used to make people follow the rules. For example, parents would tell their children that if they didn't behave, or if they didn't follow the rules of Lent, the rougarou would come for them. It is said to live in the swamps and the sugarcane fields. One way to protect your house is to leave 13 small objects, like beans or pennies, by your door. The legend says the rougarou is not very smart and can only count to 12. When it reaches the 13th object, it gets confused and has to start over. It will stay there counting all night until the sun comes up, and it has to turn back into a human or hide. So maybe 13 is not so unlucky after all. The Grunch is a monster that is said to live in the eastern part of New Orleans, near a place called Little Woods. It is described as a creature that looks like a goat with leathery skin, sharp quills on its back, and glowing red or green eyes. It is about 3 or 4 feet tall. The legend says that a group of people who were outcasts from society went to live in the woods and slowly changed into these monsters. Another story says that the Grunch was created by Marie Laveau when she tried to stop a devil baby from having its own children. The Grunch is said to be very smart and can even open doors or use tools. People say it drains the blood from animals and pets. Even after Hurricane Katrina, people in certain neighborhoods claim they saw the Grunch eating from trash cans or chasing stray cats. Deep in the swamps near New Orleans, people tell stories of a huge creature called the Honey Island Swamp Monster. It is said to be over 7 feet tall and covered in shaggy hair. People who have seen it say it looks like a mix between a human and an ape. Sightings of this monster have been reported for many years, and some people have even found large footprints with 4 toes in the mud. New Orleans has so many haunted places that it is impossible to list them all, but a few more are very famous for their specific ghosts. Lafitte's Blacksmith Bar is one of the oldest bars in the United States. It was built in the early 1700s and was used by the pirate Jean Lafitte as a front for his smuggling business. People say that Jean Lafitte's ghost still haunts the bar. He is often seen standing in the dark corners, wearing his full pirate clothes. There is also a legend about a woman who haunts the upstairs area. Many guests have reported seeing a pair of glowing red eyes staring at them from the fireplace when there is no fire burning. The Old Absinthe House is a famous building on Bourbon Street that has been around for over 200 years. Many famous people, like Mark Twain and Oscar Wilde, have visited it. The ghost of Jean Lafitte is also seen here, along with the ghost of a man in a long coat. Guests have reported seeing bottles move on their own or feeling a sudden cold wind in the middle of a hot summer day. It is said that some of the most famous people from the city's past still meet there in spirit to have a drink. Muriel's is a restaurant located on Jackson Square. It is haunted by the spirit of a man named Pierre-Antoine Lepardi Jourdan. Jourdan loved the house so much that when he lost it in a card game, he was heartbroken and took his own life. The restaurant staff is very respectful of him. They keep a table set for him every night with bread and wine so he doesn't feel lonely. Guests in the Seance Lounge have reported seeing shadows move and hearing the sound of someone whispering their name. The Pharmacy Museum was the home of America's first licensed pharmacist, Louis Dufilho. While his story is a good one, the man who owned the shop later, Dr. Dupas, was rumored to be very evil. It is said that he performed scary experiments on people. Today, people say his ghost still walks through the museum at night. Visitors have reported seeing a man in a brown suit moving display cases or throwing books off the shelves. The spirits of 2 young children are also seen playing in the courtyard. New Orleans is a city that keeps its history alive through its stories. Whether it is the ghost of a voodoo queen, a pirate, or a little boy playing in a hotel, these spirits are a part of what makes the city special. The combination of its wet, foggy geography and its history of tragedy and culture has created a place where ghost stories feel real. For the people of New Orleans, these legends are not just about being scared. They are a way to remember the people who came before them. The above-ground tombs, the old houses, and the dark swamps all hold memories of the past. As long as people continue to tell these stories, New Orleans will remain the most haunted city in the world.